You guys haven't seen the doggo for a while. This is going to be a long video, so you might as well get yourself a cup of tea, cup of coffee, whatever it is you want to drink. Listen, come here. Guys, look at him. Look at the size of this puppy. A dog. Well, he's not. He's actually just 3.5 months old, but, you know, it is exactly what it is. Yes, guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome to the George Benson Football channel for a very long requested video, probably because I was promising it every other bloody day and I didn't deliver it for some time. So for that, I profusely apologise to you, but today we do in fact have the Chelsea tier list video from the 2020-21 season, courtesy of the help of my puppy, who goes by the name of Mason. Certainly nothing to do with Mason Mount. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, who knows. But we're going to go through player by player, starting with Willy Caballero and working our way through. We've gone first of all with goalkeepers, and let me see actually the order in which I did this. We've gone with goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, and then finishing with attackers. So we are going to end up with this tier list sheet here that you can see filled with every Chelsea player who played last season. We got the top dogs, we got big season, we got huge turn up, more to come, and question for the future. And some of them have already confirmed they're moving on. The first one being Willy Caballero. So we'll start by putting Willy Caballero in question for the future, because of course he has left Chelsea Football Club. But before we get into anything else, I want to ask you to subscribe to GBFC. We are on the way to 200,000 subscribers. And if you can subscribe, that is going to help me get there a little bit sooner than if you don't. So that would be absolutely wonderful. Turn on bell notifications whilst you're at it. And whilst we're plugging away, we've got GBFC 2, which is going to be used for shorts for GBFC videos as well. Hang on, let me just get this doggy on the floor because he's giving me some hard time down there. It's going to be also used for Premier League content next season, Champions League content, and I found my old Twitch channel that I have not streamed on in 5 bloody years. Link in the description if you want to go give me a follow on there. We'll be back on there very soon too. But without any further ado, we are going to move on from Willy Caballero into Kepa Arrizabalaga. And for Kepa, it's unfortunate because again, he's at the bottom of the ladder. There were some good performances from Kepa at times last season, and I think also in moments he was unlucky when he regained his place to also lose it again. But when you've got a player in the form and with the quality and with the dressing room presence of Edouard Mendy, Kepa was always going to struggle. And I've put him in box number 5 or tier number 5, question for the future, because I think it's been pretty clear now for some time, even though Kepa can be a very good goalkeeper, and I still believe he's nowhere near reaching any of the potential that Chelsea saw in him when they decided to spend what they spent on him. But for him, now that Mendy's in there, I don't see a way back for Kepa as Chelsea's number 1, unless Mendy gets injured. Of course, we've got the African Cup of Nations coming up this season as well, which is a shame for Chelsea to lose Mendy. But in terms of Kepa staying or going at Chelsea, I do believe that if the right offer comes in for Kepa, maybe it's a loan with an option to buy. Lazio will link with him at some point, reunited with Maurizio Sarri, which I always found an interesting link. But I think for Kepa, it is certainly questionable as to whether or not his long-term future lies Chelsea Football Club. And we move into Edouard Mendy, and of course, it is a polar opposite. He goes into the top dogs. I think in terms of a debut season for a goalkeeper, I can only ever remember Petr Cech coming anywhere close to what Edouard Mendy achieved. Petr Cech came in, and we saw it in his first ever Premier League game. You remember against Manchester United where Idager Johnson scored the winning goal in Mourinho's first game in charge, and then Petr Cech made a couple of blinding saves to secure all 3 points for Chelsea. This season, Edouard Mendy was exceptional. The record that he has in the Champions League with the Golden Glove and everything else on top of that was outstanding. And I think when he first came in, I was unsure. I thought he was going to be second fiddle to Kepa Arrizabalaga. He didn't have like this big name that a lot of goalkeepers did have, that Chelsea might have been linked with. You look at Donnarumma now for a couple of years, who's now at Paris Saint-Germain. But Edouard Mendy was just brilliant. And I think it's not just the saves that he made and the clean sheets that he kept, it's the personality. And a lot of the time when I'm analysing Chelsea players and the players I really like, the players that I want more from, players I don't like, a lot of it comes down to personality. I watch all of the videos, I try and watch every interview that every player or manager or anyone does, just to get a feeling for the person behind what we see from the statistics or what we watch within 90 minutes. And Edouard Mendy, now there were times this season just gone where Marcos Alonso did very well. He reminded us that even though Chelsea fans have been very divided, very split with their analysis or love for Marcos Alonso over the years, he turned up in some occasions, but he also had the moments, we've got to remember, where he tries to get on the bus because he gets taken off at half-time against West Brom when Chelsea are 3-0 down. And it's moments like that that really do make me question Marcos Alonso's future at Chelsea. And I could have put him in tier number 4, more to come, but I decided to put him in tier number 5 because Chelsea have reported, or it is reported, that Chelsea may well be looking to offload Marcos Alonso this summer. So we move into Azpilicueta. And for Azpi, I could have easily put so many of these Chelsea players in tier number 1 because we are champions of Europe, and there's not really much better that you can get from that. But what I've tried to do is I've tried to really differentiate it as much as possible. So tier 2 is big season. And in terms of individual performances across the board, I definitely think there were more standout displays from Azpilicueta in other seasons that he's been at Chelsea. But there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that the influence Azpi has on that dressing room as Chelsea's captain, leading us to European glory, it could be nothing other than a big season. I was umming and ahhing about this one. I wanted to put Azpi in top dog, but I ended up putting him in big season because overall, I do believe there were times at the beginning of the season under Lampard, which you've got to remember, it wasn't just the Thomas Tuchel takeover that led to Chelsea's European glory. There was a bit of football that was played before that as well. And there were times where I actually thought Azpi might have been done. And, well, he turned up hugely, which could have put him in number 3, but number 2 is just that little bit better. It was brilliant from Azpilicueta. I think he might even end his career at Chelsea Football Club. I'd love to see it. And Azpi goes in to tier 2. We move into Benjamin bloody Chilwell. This man had a wonderful end to the season. And in terms of what we saw from him at the beginning, it was a little bit slow to get started. I think obviously Chelsea in general were a little bit slow for the first half of the season, and at one stage or another it did look as though it could have been a catastrophe. When Frank Lampard was sacked, I remember the day very well. I was gutted. I was emotionally distraught. If you want to see the GBFC 2 video that I've made today talking about emotions in football, you should go and check that one out. But Ben Chilwell, as the season progressed, he became more and more important to this Chelsea team, and I've actually put him in tier number 3. Again, it's very tough, I know, because so many of these players, based off of the end of the season, deserve to be right at the top. But for Ben Chilwell, the glow up from the beginning of the season to what we saw at the end was just far too obvious to turn down. So for that reason, Chilwell goes into number 3. There's also elements of number 4, more to come for sure, but Ben Chilwell is on the rise. And despite not playing for England at the Euros, because of Luke Shaw's brilliance, I certainly feel as though this season we're going to see Ben Chilwell develop even further at Chelsea Football Club. We move into player number 7. Number 7. I don't know what I'm going on about here. Andreas Christensen, known now to many as the Danish Maldini. Andreas Christensen, at the beginning of the season, I'm thinking, blimey, is this guy ever going to show the promise that we were expecting, or the potential that so many people, John Terry included, was talking about regarding Andreas Christensen? And I didn't think it was ever going to come. In comes Thomas Tuchel, Chelsea's talisman manager from Germany, and Andreas Christensen is like a new player. And I've put him in category number 3, tier number 3, a huge turn up from Christensen towards the end of the season, and now that what we've seen in the Euros as well, indispensable at Chelsea Football Club. I wouldn't consider selling him at all at any price, and I do believe that the best from a very talented centre-half is still to come in a Chelsea shirt from Christensen. European champion, immense in that final as well. He goes into tier 3, and the good thing about this is the first 4 tiers are all pretty good, because it would be very difficult to differentiate anything else when Chelsea just won the Champions League. But Andreas Christensen goes in to tier 3. We move into tier 4, and it's Emerson Palmieri. Emerson, I mean, again, it feels odd saying anything negative about Emerson after just winning the European Championship with Italy and the Champions League with Chelsea. Standout moment for Emerson was obviously the goal that he scored to secure the victory at home to Atletico Madrid in the last 16 of the Champions League. But other than that, there wasn't that many minutes to shout about with Emerson again. And there is a lot of talks that Roma, Napoli are very interested in signing the player this summer. So for that reason, he goes in to tier number 5. But I do want to add that when Emerson came in for Spinazzola for Italy in the Euros, he looked very good. And I certainly feel as though there is a very good left back in there somewhere. But whether he fits at Chelsea or not, with Chilwell clearly being the number 1, we'll see. if he manages to stay or not this summer, but I think he's going to leave. We move into player number 9, and it is Kurt Zouma. Now for Zouma, there's obviously some statistics for Kurt Zouma scoring goals in the past season that do favour him very well indeed. However, there was still a handful of errors that I remember seeing at times last season, and in a tier list, it is, in essence, a comparative overlook at all of the players. And unfortunately for Zouma, under Thomas Tuchel, it looks as though he is, of all of the centre-backs at Chelsea Football Club, the one who is most out of the question in terms of Thomas Tuchel's plans. So for that reason, he's the first player to go into tier number 4. I say more to come because I do still believe that centre-back who pops up and scores goals from corners every once in a while, there is definitely a, what's the right word, consistency with Zouma that we're still waiting for. And I do believe that, especially with how successful Chelsea were at the end of last season, I do believe that that lack of consistency could well be the reason why Zouma leaves Chelsea this summer. In terms of looking at the centre-backs that we have, the pecking order, as I always call it, and I think Zouma's at the bottom. So he goes into tier number 4, but he is also a question for the future because Chelsea apparently are open to sell the player. We move into Reece James, a man who you guys know I absolutely adore. Reece James at Chelsea Football Club, and also, of course, for England as well. I've put Reece in tier number 2. I think there's still so much more to come from Reece James that if I'm still making these videos on Chelsea Football Club here on GBFC, in 5 or 6 years' time, I believe it will be a no-brainer every season that Reece James gets put in the top dogs tier. So for that reason, I put him in tier number 2 because, again, I think it was a season of development at an incredibly high level for such a young player once again. And I think Reece James will definitely go on to be the Premier League's best right-back for many, many years. And we're talking, of course, about an incredibly competitive position, not just for England, but in the Premier League as well. Right-backs, they're a commodity really these days because wing-backs and full-backs have become more important in football as they get forward a lot more. And Reece James is the prime example of a top quality full-back or wing-back who can get forward and also still do his defensive duties to a very solid level. We move into player number 11 and Rudiger. I mean, Rudy at one stage again this season under Frank Lampard, it looked as though he could have been, you know, hung out to dry, never play for Chelsea again. As much as there's a lot of players here that would deserve to be in the top dogs category, I have put Rudiger in the top dogs category because I think of anyone who you can pinpoint individually to the reason behind Chelsea's success with winning the Champions League last season, I think Rudiger deserves as much credit as anybody for the turnaround when Thomas Tuchel came in. Thomas Tuchel gave him that left centre-back role, and the amount of times Rudiger put in flawless performances to a level of world class, for me, it's why he got the nod to go into the top tier over maybe a Christensen or a Reece James or an Aspi. Because I think the difference that Rudiger made when he came back into the squad on a more permanent basis was outrageously good. You remember that incredible tackle in the Champions League final. You won't see a better tackle than that all season next year. It was incredible from Tony Rudiger, and he goes into the top dogs category alongside the Brazilian maestro who goes by the name of Thiago Silva. I thought Thiago Silva, arguably one of the signings of the season for any Premier League club, as it was a free transfer from PSG. Thiago Silva brought a leadership to this Chelsea team. He also brought a nurturing element to some of the young players that are coming through, and that leadership, not just from a personality level, as I bring it back to that again, but also in a footballing sense. You cannot underestimate the influence that Thiago Silva has had on so many Chelsea players in his debut season in the Premier League. Thiago Silva, I thought, was excellent. Of course, at 36 years old, there's going to be injuries, there's going to be time on the sidelines, and he was unfortunate to only get 30-odd minutes in the Champions League final, but he was immense in the entire campaign. And I've put Thiago Silva in the top dogs category, and we move into Billy Gilmour, the first of the midfielders, and I've put him in more to come. We know that this season he's out on loan at Norwich City, which I think is a fantastic move for Billy Gilmour, and it's also a good move for Chelsea because it enables us to spend a bit more time looking at some of the other midfielders we have at the club who can potentially do different things, such as Ruben Loftus-Cheek. All you got to do is look at them. But Ruben, Billy Gilmour, totally different players. And I think this season for Billy, He's at a level already where we know he can cut it in the big games for Chelsea. We know he's good enough. It's not even a question about that anymore. You see what he did to England for Scotland, and England were finalists in the bloody Euro. Billy Gilmour, there's a lot more to come. And I said on Twitter a couple of weeks ago that I genuinely feel that Billy Gilmour will end up going down as one of Chelsea's greatest ever midfielders. I think he's got that much ability, and I wish him all the best this season at Norwich City. And we move into Jorginho, the man who, again, double European champion, got nothing but good things to say about this guy now. And at the beginning of the season, again, I can't mention it for one and not for another. You guys know that Jorginho is a player who at times stresses me out. And it's also very much an error on my behalf sometimes, because often, just because his style is something that's taken me a very long time to understand and appreciate, I'd often scapegoat Jorginho for what was overall a dreadful team performance. And I think that was very unfair of me on reflection. But towards the end of the season, Champions League run, even in the final itself, Jorginho was immense. And I put him in the big season category because, again, at the beginning, I thought he was right down at the bottom. Same with Rudiger, I know. But that is what the tier list is all about. You guys can agree or disagree with me in the comments down below. And I think the best of Jorginho that we'll see in a Chelsea shirt is going to come this season. I think the confidence that that man has right now as a double European champion cannot at any cost be underestimated. He's been absolutely immense, and he goes into tier number 2, which is still incredibly good. We move into Kai Havertz, and simply because he scored the winning goal in a Champions League final to win Chelsea, the biggest trophy of them all, he goes straight into tier number 2. I was going to put him in tier number 3 because it really was a huge turn up from Havertz after getting COVID, and the start of the season, despite a hat-trick against Barnsley, it was slow. You know, people saw Havertz as this big money flop. A lot of people labelled him as that. And then to end his first season at Chelsea Football Club, the man scores that goal. For that reason alone, we know that there is so much more to come from Kai Havertz. We know the wonderful silky footballer that we've got on our hands. And talking about Havertz gets me more excited about next season than any other player, for my personal opinion. Even if it is a new signing that comes in, Havertz, I feel like the confidence he's going to have, I've talked about it before here on the channel, it's going to be massive. And I cannot wait to see him in 2021-22. We move into, of course, the magician, the absolute don of a human being, the legend who goes by the name of N'Golo Kante. He goes straight into the top dogs category for me. There was so many times last season where not just my own personal plaudit, but looking across the footballing world, absolutely widely renowned and known that you cannot dislike N'Golo Kante. You just can't. I don't know, what would he have to do for someone to dislike him? I don't know, maybe he goes and keys the side of your car. Maybe that's a good enough reason. But he's not going to do that. The guy doesn't know how not to smile. He's absolutely wonderful. He's a footballer who I was disappointed that France got knocked out when they did in the Euros, because it meant I couldn't get to see N'Golo Kante play more football. Simple as that. The man is absolutely incredible, and Chelsea Football Club are so lucky to have him at our club. He's now a European champion, World Cup winner, Premier League with both Leicester and Chelsea. The man can do no wrong. He's in the top dogs category alongside Mendy, Rudiger and Silva. We move into Mateo Kovacic, who again, I think all of the Chelsea players, between what we saw at the start of the season and where we ended, of course, everybody naturally turned up. We won the flipping Champions League, if you didn't already know. I've put Kovacic in number 3. I wouldn't say it was his best ever season as a Chelsea player, because that was before, but at the same time, when called upon in big games, Kovacic was there. The way that he retains the ball, the way that he holds the ball, the way that he wins the ball, very important in the Chelsea midfield. And I think this coming season, it's going to be very interesting to see how Thomas Tuchel balances Jorginho, Kante, Kovacic. We don't have the worry now of got to sneak in minutes for Billy Gilmour, but it's also very much a case of Chelsea might look a bit lightweight if there's an injury in the centre of the midfield. So maybe we see Ziyech drop deeper, maybe we see Mount drop deeper again, maybe Havertz drops deeper at times as well to accommodate for injuries, but there's definitely more to come from Mateo Kovacic, who's also been playing tennis, according to Twitter recently, for the Marin Cilic Foundation, which is great to see. But we move into Mason Mount. You guys know I bloody love this geezer. I think he is an exceptional footballer as the wind starts to pick up and blow the bloody barnet all over the gaff. Mason Mount, absolutely indispensable to Chelsea Football Club, to quote Fabrizio Romano himself. Indispensable to England, and Gareth Southgate for that matter as well. Mason Mount had another wonderful season. And I think the craziest thing with Mason Mount is that it's very difficult to actually anticipate just how far this guy can go. In terms of talent, in terms of the potential with the talent, he's got absolutely bundles of it, and there's absolutely no ceiling to where he can go. But it's not just about potential with Mason Mount at such a young age. He's already delivering. He's already become a player who is undroppable by his manager. Thomas Tuchel didn't play him in the game against Wolves, I think it was. And then all of a sudden, immediately, he just knows that this guy has to be in the Chelsea team game by game. And I find it absolutely mind-boggling that people can still criticise Mason Mount as a footballer or even question the quality that this man has. We move into Hakim Ziyech. Hakim Ziyech is a player who is reportedly maybe on the verge of leaving Chelsea this summer if the right move comes in for him. I saw the other day that Lyon are interested in bringing Hakim Ziyech to France. I do know that there's still a very good player in Hakim Ziyech, and in big games, particularly against Manchester City, the man turned up and showed his brilliance. However, I would be lying if I told you that I didn't expect a little bit more from Hakim Ziyech this season. Yes, it was very difficult for him to staple his ability and what he brings to the team because he was in and out of the squad, as were many players this season, which made it very hard to really stamp their authority in terms of their individual positioning in the side. Hakim Ziyech, I've put him in tier number 4. I think if he stays at Chelsea, we're going to see more of the Moroccan wizard that we maybe didn't see as often as we'd have liked in his first season. We move into Olivier Giroud, and I've put Olivier Giroud in tier number 2 because although the minutes that he played might not have been up there with some of the other players in the squads, the importance of what Olivier Giroud brought to this team this season cannot be underestimated. The 4 goals in Seville, the overhead kick against Atletico Madrid, the leadership qualities and professionalism within the dressing room. He's one of those older players that you could call upon when things aren't going well to really be there for everybody else around him, to make sure that heads don't drop to a level that is, you can't get things back to a normality. Quick little change of camera battery there. I also think it's absolutely wonderful that Olivier Giroud, when people remember his time in the Premier League, will remember that he's a Champions League winner with Chelsea instead of his time with mid-table club Arsenal, which is also wonderful for me as a Chelsea fan. Olivier Giroud is moving on to AC Milan. Thank you for everything, Olivier. I said it in the video the other day, but he goes into the big season tier. We move into Callum Hudson-Odoi. And again, with Callum, I've said it time and time again, it feels like Callum Hudson-Odoi is a ticking time bomb at Chelsea. He is just a little run in the team away from showing the world what he can do. And I've put Callum Hudson-Odoi in tier 4, more to come, because I believe as long as he stays at Chelsea, which of course when the Bayern Munich interest came in, we gave him a new contract, he signed the new deal, but then with Haaland links and maybe players departing as a result, it could be an option, but I know that Callum Hudson-Odoi is going to have an incredible career, and I really hope that's at Chelsea. I hope this season he gets given the opportunity, and I think maybe he will, because obviously he was one of the first back for pre-season, and I know there is a lot more to come from Callum. He goes into tier 4, and the next one is Christian Pulisic. And again, Christian Pulisic, at times this season, unplayable. We never really saw as consistently the same Pulisic that we saw post-COVID at the end of last season. But I also believe that Christian Pulisic had a very big season again at Chelsea. There were times when he was out of the team, but you see it with Christian's attitude. You see it when he's on the pitch. He's always looking to give absolutely everything. And even though it isn't a guarantee that he's going to start every single game because of the plethora of talent we have in attack at Chelsea Football Club, I think we're going to see even more brilliance from Christian Pulisic this coming season. And I thought 2020-2021 was another very good year for the American. We move into Tammy Abraham. And unfortunately for Tammy, it wasn't the second season as Chelsea's number 9 that he would have liked. Towards the end of it, it looked as, well, I mean, he couldn't even get in the squad for the FA Cup final. So there was only really one place to put Tammy Abraham, and that was in tier 5, question for the future, because we don't know if Tammy Abraham's going to stay at Chelsea. I'd like to see him do it, but then I also want to see Erling Haaland come to Chelsea too. So it's kind of like, it could be seen as hypocritical one way or another. I think there's a very, very good striker in Tammy Abraham. I think if he does leave Chelsea, he will be a 15-goal minimum a season striker if he's playing 38 games for any other club in the division. But in terms of being Chelsea's number 9, consistency, again, Chelsea want to be not just winning Champions Leagues, but Premier Leagues and everything else as well. Is Tammy that striker? We haven't seen enough yet to prove that he is. So he goes into tier number 5, and we move into Timo Werner. And this is the one that I know you've all been waiting for, because you're waiting to see what I say about Timo Werner, because again, he's a man who does split opinion, because if you look at the black and white, which is the goals and assists, the contributions in his first year at Chelsea, he did very well indeed. He was involved in 27 goals, which is pretty good. But when you also think about a lot of the chances that he missed, you wonder why that number is not significantly higher. There was no one else in the Premier League, I believe, that missed as many big chances as Timo Werner did last season. So therefore, he has to go in tier number 4, more to come. I think this season, whether Chelsea do sign a Haaland or a Lukaku, whatever, I'm done talking about it on GBFC until there's anything actually concrete to discuss. Timo Werner is going to have a big year. One way or another, whichever position that might be in, we're going to see more from Timo Werner this year. I've just got a feeling that the Werner that we thought we were going to get last season, the 25-30 goal Werner, might just come out this coming year. He's the final player in the tier list, so you guys can see my final 2020-2021 Chelsea FC player tier list right here. And as always, I would love to know what you think in the comments below. Is there any in particular that you just dramatically disagree with? Or do you think I've done a good enough job? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. This has been a bloody long video, by the way, so if you are still here, let me know in the comments that you made it to the end by just leaving a comment saying Champions of Europe, we know what we are. Subscribe if you are new, hit the like button if you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Come on, you Blues.